To start, I would like to acknowledge the land on which we meet tonight, the land of the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And I'd also like to acknowledge the country on which our fellows here at the Academy, the country from which they reside, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. This is such a wonderful thing to be a part of, to be in this extraordinary building, in this planned city, to talk about AI. This is the second in the series. Can I have a little smug whoop from anyone who's bought a series pass and was here at the first one? Little whoop. And online, I think we've got 1,000 people online tonight, so you can give yourself a little pat on the back in your pyjamas or wherever you're listening from. But guaranteed, you are probably comfortable at home, but here in the seats in the Shine Dome, I think these are the most comfortable seats I think ever designed. These seats were designed by an architect, surely. Are they? So comfortable. Now, I consider this building and the work that is done within these walls and by the fellows around Australia to be extraordinary. The mind, the data that those minds process every day to deliver incredible science and technology. But yet we're thinking of the next big revolution of AI. Now, I have to recap the first event. This is quite a big job for someone. Honestly, the event was an hour. I think if we'd made it 2 hours and done it at double speed, played it at double speed, you still couldn't have fitted in as much as we fitted into that 1 hour. So much extraordinary information. And I've just written down brace for impact. But I want to actually change that now and do embrace for impact. And the very fact that you are all here tonight listening, getting your head around what AI is, how it will revolutionise your lives or the lives of children, grandchildren, the future, is step number one, the most important step. That's what I got out of it. We have to be aware of it. At best, at the moment, it's a fantastic PA. I mean, I need a fantastic PA, and you've got to know what to ask a fantastic PA. But the potential is enormous. I'm just taking a little. So I also learnt that there is great promises around AI, and with that, it's going to connect us, it's going to make things easier, it's going to make things accelerate at a pace of change I think we've never seen before. And so we have to embrace for change because it's coming. There's no way to avoid it. It's here and we've got to know how to use it. So to start tonight, I would like to first pay our thanks to the series conveners. This is a 6-part series and already I think it's the zeitgeist of AI. So Professor Bob Graham, Academy Vice President, who is convening this series, and Professor Ian Chubb, Academy Secretary for Science Policy. Thank you also to our event sponsors. We have Digital Science and Pawsey Supercomputing Research Centre. As I also learned in the first lecture, anything is possible. Like literally, let your imagination run wild and it will be possible. If we have the energy resources to power the data centres, because that is going to be the topic of a future lecture around the environment, AI and the environment. Now, we tonight, I'm going to call her to action in a moment. We have a live graphic scribe. So she will be digesting and drawing. That is Indigo Strudwick. Indigo, I don't know if we can see your piece of paper yet, but... Oh, is she there? Oh, there she is. So this is an actual human. I know it could be that I could be recording this and an AI might be drawing that, but no, we know Indigo is there because last lecture I talked about the ducks because you could design everything into the Shine Dome, but you could never anticipate the ducks would land on the beautiful moat around the Shine Dome. And tonight, as I was arriving, it was rabbits. So Indigo will be scribing. She has to digest everything into a one page up there. She'll scribble things out and do things again, but we love the finished product. And if you missed the first lecture, please go back and watch it on YouTube. Do yourself that favour. Now, AI and healthcare. Just have a think. When you went to see a doctor recently or went to a healthcare professional, was it all human interaction? Or did it involve AI? I see a head saying, no, definitely all human. I went to the optometrist today, and the optometrist did the usual better or worse, number one, number two, number one, number two. And it went for about 10 minutes, as it does, but then he brought out the machine, which I thought, first of all, lost opportunity, because it was an AI, EYE, but it was called something else, lost opportunity, but it did the work of the optometrist, not just the better or worse, number one, number two. It measured my eyes, it looked at my eye health, it looked at future problems in my eyes, macular degeneration, cataracts, all of those things from this computer, from this little AI machine. And I thought, it's here. I wasn't aware of it. I had to ask. I said, is that an AI? He said, yeah, well, it is incorporating AI. And there we have it. It's here, but where could it go? And what is involved in gathering the data that is going to drive those models? Let us kick off with our first expert. Professor Enrico Correia, I'd like to say is very well qualified to be here tonight. He's the Director for the Centre for Health Informatics within the Australian Institute of Health Innovation at Macquarie University, TIC. He also founded and leads the Australian Alliance for Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare, which is a group of over 100 member organisations looking at how we navigate AI in healthcare. And so you can say, yeah, fair enough. I can see why the Academy's got Enrico to come and speak today. But also, he is a medical doctor. So he comes with that, the medical doctor, but then he fell into the wrong crowd. It was I think a computer geek he met when he was in his first year out and working at a hospital. And from there, he became very interested in computers, worked with Hewlett-Packard, and now brings all of those skills of the medical knowledge and the humanity that all our medicos bring, along with all of that computer. So please give a big round of applause for Enrico.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm always a bit threatened by those introductions and I feel I have to deliver something to you. So the theme for this series is promise and perils, and I thought that's really a perfect description of the challenge we face in healthcare. So I've been in this game of AI for quite a while in healthcare, and I'm very excited by all the things it can bring, but a lot of my research focuses on the risks and harms that can come. So you're going to hear both of those from me tonight. Now, when I talk about AI, I'm going to mean it very generally, so I'm not going to get very technical at all tonight. I may occasionally talk about generative AI, and for those of you who have used ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or whatever, you'll know that it's a new kid on the block technology that literally does what the name suggests and generates a plausible answer. Now, all the AIs I'm used to dealing with generate the answer as far as they're concerned. Gen I makes it up. Anyway, so I thought I would start by really focusing on why we should care about AI in healthcare. And these are the three numbers that we like to talk about, which represent the nature of the care we deliver in healthcare not just in Australia, but globally. So 60% of care on average is in line with best practice, best research evidence. It's a bit low actually, isn't it? 30% is what we would consider harmless or wasted. So if you've got back pain, have an X-ray. Evidence says don't do that. That's just wasted care. And about 10% of what we do hurts us. Maybe it's a small incident, maybe it's a significant incident. Now this is an average, and we do really well in some areas. Australia actually does pretty well comparatively. If you look at general practice, for example, and say cardiovascular care, 95% compliance with best practice. So, but people say the systems do what they're designed to do, and this is a global number, and I mean global around the planet. This is what healthcare systems do. So what can we do to fix it? Many things, but one of the promises of technology for a long time has been that we can improve the quality of the care we deliver. And this very simple picture comes from a colleague of mine, Chuck Friedman in Michigan, who basically says the goal is to create human plus machine that exceeds what we do on our own. So it's human augmented care. It's not replacing us. It's doing better than we can do. Now, just to give you a sense of how rapidly AI is penetrating healthcare, this is one of those go up to the right graphs. And this is approvals by the US FDA. That's the organisation in the US that approves new drugs, new medical devices, and these are new approvals for AI in clinical care. So they've gone through rigorous testing. And you can see in 2020, they'd got to about 100. Last year, they cracked the 1,000th clinical AI approval. So things are really taken off. These are things that are being used everywhere. So let's get to some of the promise. And I know the next talk is going to be focusing a lot on AI and melanoma, so I'm not going to steal that thunder, but the traditional home for AI in healthcare has been those high-value tasks like diagnosing, picking a treatment, suggesting your prognosis, your risk of surviving or having side effects. And that's the way I conceptualised AI really for much of my career. We're always trying to help doctors do a better job at diagnosis. But things have changed. Could I get a show of hands? Whose general practitioner now dictates into what's called a digital scribe? Quite a few of you. So digital scribes essentially listen in to that conversation that you're having, and it's a generative AI. And then what it does is it doesn't spit out a transcript of your conversation, but a summary. So the AI knows enough to be able to create a summary. Then the doctor will look at it, will maybe correct a few bits and pieces, but it generates that. And we know that that reduces burden on clinicians. So one of the big pressures is getting things right and getting them done under pressure. You know, you've got 5-10 minutes to do a consult sometimes in primary care. So doctors have been often criticised for being laggards in adopting technology. This technology was not in the market 2 years ago. Now more than 50% of GPs are using it or strongly intend to use it. So from my perspective, this is an extraordinary arrival of a new technology and extraordinary rapid adoption, which brings its own challenges, you know, promise and perils. One of the things that I think has gone unspoken in this is not so much the impact of AI on diagnosis and treatment or these back-of-house tasks like documentation, but on the very process of science. So if you're into this game, you might know of DeepMind, which is a company based in the UK associated with Google. And they have a program called AlphaFold. And there's a challenge which is called the protein folding challenge. The idea is you've got a sequence of peptides and you have to work out how this damn thing will come together in 3D, because that'll be the shape of the receptor. That'll help you, for example, design the drugs that pop in there. And it used to take about 10 years per protein to do that 3D task. They, in 12 months, did the 3D confirmation for all known proteins, 200 million proteins, and then released it to the world. So who knows what magic will come from that, but that's a huge accelerant to science. Now, you also know there's this discourse, isn't there, about AI is going to make us redundant. And you can already imagine jobs that will disappear. Like, sadly, I think we won't have people on the phone answering it. When you call up a hospital and want to speak to somebody, that'll be a chatbot very soon, I'm sure. And the smuggest group who think they'll never be replaced are scientists, right? They think we're too clever, we're too clever. So it turns out that you're not that clever. And that, in fact, there are whole chunks of the process of research and science which are automatable. So this is a piece by Ross King, who's been in the space for about 20 years, building what he called a robo-scientist. Essentially, an AI that can generate hypotheses and then assemble the experiments to test them. Now, at the moment, it's still very automated and works in certain classes of problem, but no time to be smug anymore. So I think what I would like to focus on for the rest of the talk is to explore that issue of the perils of AI, not in the sense that these are insurmountable problems, but these are the problems we're facing today in healthcare, and we'll give you a sense of the challenges we still have to face. So these are case studies, but they're all fictitious. No humans were harmed in the creation of these case studies, so feel comfortable. So the first one, case one, is very plausible. I know it happens all the time. It probably happens on the floor of hospitals all around Australia. A bright young resident is walking around the wards, is doing a ward round, and dictates into their phone and uses ChatGPT, which is one of those generative AIs, to dictate what's happened. ChatGPT generates the summary, and they cut and paste that into the record. It's very time efficient, fantastic, really great idea, except that this is not a medical technology. This is not medical grade. It's not designed for this task. We don't know how good a job it's doing. And critically, these data that are collected by the AI to generate the summary go overseas to the United States, to China, or wherever the AI is based, outside of the jurisdiction of Australian laws. All those identifiable pieces of data that identify you have now been given to a third-party company, which is free to do whatever the hell it wants. It can sell them, it can do whatever you want. So it's interesting that just because the technology does the job doesn't mean it's fit for purpose for the job. So we always talk about being very careful about using technology. So those digital scribes I just talked about, the data will be stored here in Australia under Australian rules. But if you go and use, just like you do a Google search, you do a ChatGPT search, that data goes somewhere else. So don't do that if you're a doctor in the audience. Next one is very similar. This is now a general practitioner. Every general practitioner probably in Australia has electronic records now, and they all order their medications with their scripts for you online. And really for the last 30 years, there have been very simple drug-drug interaction checking devices. But what the digital scribes are now doing doing something extra. They are now generating things like letters, one of the really boring things that you have to do. And you can ask it to write a letter to the specialist. So you say, here's the record, could you please generate the letter? Fantastic. The problem I have, and many of us have, is that these technologies hallucinate, which is the polite word we use for making things up. It's a probabilistic process, which means that you might have two diseases, and the scribe might say, well, look, there's another disease that is very highly likely correlated with those two, so I'll give you that too. So that's why at the moment every doctor has to read everything that comes out of these devices. Now, troublingly, up until now, these are also not considered technologies that need to be regulated. So this is a very unregulated space. Australia's TGA, which does the regulation, is very acutely aware of the challenge, but at the moment, if you have your scribe look at your data, that nobody has assessed that for safety and quality, and there is no assessment that is published by the manufacturers. So if you buy a hi-fi, you can see the signal-to-noise ratio. What are those wonderful graphs you get with your hi-fi? You don't know the performance of the digital scribe. Interestingly, both Victorian State Department of Health and South Australian Department of Health have banned the use of these technologies in their hospital systems unless they have been through TGA. So certainly people are paying attention. Okay, let's move to the more medically part of the examples. So here is the use of AI now to interpret imaging. And so AI is really good at doing things like looking at ultrasounds, X-rays, MRIs, CTs. Image interpretation is really a huge strength of these deep learning technologies. And so here, in this example, we do the ultrasound on the thyroid. The AI sees a little nodule and says, could be cancer. Pay attention, which you think is great. But remember the 60, 30, 10? That 30 was about care that was not necessary. And with thyroid cancer, we overdiagnose and overtreat. That means that people get medical treatment that they probably don't need because the cancer would never progress. And the AI is really good at seeing tiny little things that may never turn into anything serious. So as the slide lets you know, in South Korea, they have a 15-fold increase through better diagnosis of cancer. It's not really that there are 15 times more cancer cases in South Korea, they're just being detected 15 times more. So the risk here then of this technology is they're better and better at finding stuff, but it may not be stuff that we really need to be treating. So need to watch that space. Next one, that awful device. We'll just not talk too much about it. It's a colonoscope. So you can buy your colonoscope now if you're a gastroenterologist with AI in it. And the AI is designed to look in those colonic images to look for polyps and help the gastroenterologist detect if there's potentially cancer in there. Often when you speak to these folks, they'll say, it's so annoying. It's got what's called false positives. It sees things that are not there. I've got to check every one. It's really a waste of my time. The problem is, it's actually a pretty good technology. And it does tend to find things that are small, hard to see, and are exactly the things that a human will miss. So small, flat, hidden behind a fold of the mucosa. Those are the sorts of things that we actually want to find. So this is a case where probably the cost to humans might be that I have to spend 5 more minutes in the procedure, but the benefit to you as a patient is actually that you'll have a better quality of care. So you might suggest actually that despite the fact that people complain that it generates work, this is standard of care now. We should be using AI in this particular spot. Okay, case 5. So this is one where somebody arrives in the emergency department. They've got right-sided weakness. You're obviously worrying about a stroke. Is that what's going on? So he needs to have a CT to see what's going on. And there's an AI involved. The AI's role is to triage. Triage means simply to decide who gets seen first, right? And so some people are higher risk cases, so they get seen earlier. The AI says this case needs to come in front of queue. So this person is identified as high risk by the AI, goes and has the CT, and indeed they find it, and in that golden hour they treat it, and the patient does really well. So that's fantastic. It clearly is a great use of AI. But there is, again, a hidden challenge in all that. And this is simply that people misunderstand what this AI is doing. A lot of clinicians think the AI is diagnosing. It's not. All it's saying is there's a risk, and the risk is higher. But just because I gave you a low triage doesn't mean I shouldn't have a CT. It doesn't mean a human shouldn't read the scan, and it doesn't mean you didn't have a stroke. So it's about us misunderstanding intended use. I have another example which is more a consumer one, which is the smartwatch. Do people have smartwatches that detect whether you've got atrial fibrillation or not? Yeah? So there are a couple of cases in the US which have gone to court because people have had heart attacks and the watch has said nothing because they don't have atrial fibrillation. But it's not designed to detect heart attacks. So the misunderstanding is, well, I've got pain, but there's no problem here. So So what should I do? Nothing. I'll go home and have a beer. No. So people impute to the AI greater powers than it really has, and that's a problem. Okay, last case. This is going back to our GP again, using their electronic records with their prescribing system and some support, helping them detect. They prescribe a new medicine to you, and it's got a serious interaction with the drug you're already on, but the prescribing system doesn't tell you. So they go ahead and prescribe it, and indeed the side effect occurs, and there are several cases in Australian law where this is exactly the situation. And what's going on here? Well, I don't know if people have found themselves in this circumstance. Has anybody done this? Has anybody listened to the GPS when they shouldn't have? So this is what we automation automation bias. This is the human desire to accept what the machine tells you to do. And it arises when the machine usually does a good job, but occasionally makes mistakes. So what happens is we build trust in the system, and then it fails our trust and we get into trouble. It's the same thing with your Tesla car, where people feel that autopilot's doing a good job, so I'll take my hands off the wheel. I shouldn't have to worry, and then all of a sudden something does happen and you have a car accident. So keep your hands on the wheel with your Tesla, but also if you're a clinician, we need to be always checking why or why not a decision has been made by the AI. It's not that it's doing a bad job, but you just can't trust it because of this issue. And it's a difficult bias to remedy, I've got to say. So we know training helps a little bit, designing user interfaces helps a little bit, but it's still a problem. So just in case you're starting to panic, should I go to my doctor at all? Is it safe? I want to do a shout out to AHPRA, which is the national regulator for healthcare professionals, and set standards of practice. And in their standards of practice, they have all this embedded. They have now said in their common code of practice, these are the things you need to do if you use AI. And they include things like ensuring they have your consent to use AI, to be transparent about where AI played a role, et cetera, and they need to be sufficiently expert in understanding what the AI is doing, so they just can't find and forget. So don't be too scared. We're doing pretty well here in Australia. So I will leave you with one of my favourites, Amara's law. We tend to overestimate technology in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. So that you'll meet the people who overestimate. They're so excited by the technology. It's going to change everything. And then there are the people who say, look, this is just nonsense. It's never going to happen. So when I speak to medical students, I'll say, well, look, you probably have a 30 to 40-year career now. It's very likely that the career you start in now will not be what you do in 10 years. It's probably that you'll have 2 or 3 different careers by the time you finish. So although it still feels a little bit bitsy, it's really clear that even with the technologies predating generative AI, we are able, I think now, to really transform the way healthcare delivers quality and safe care. I think, like all things, there are going to be ups and downs in terms of progress, but there's enormous interest and excitement at the moment. So my concern actually is that people get too excited. Just slow down, guys. They say in Silicon Valley that we should move fast and break things, but I keep on reminding people in healthcare the things you break are people. So let's not do that, guys. I'll leave you with my favourite AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrico, and I'm going to take my excitement down a level. But it's so interesting. If anyone has a question, no doubt your brains are fizzing with questions, please hold them in, and at the end we will get to ask your questions, and we'll have anyone online as well I think there's a QR code that if you want to scan, if you're not comfortable asking a live question here, scan the QR code and you can type your question in. And if you're listening online, you can just type your question in there and we will get an AI to sort those out and ask the most relevant. So many interesting things, Enrico, about that, about the potential, but also where we're actually at, the promise, and actually just what we're doing. I love the fact that AI can write a letter from a doctor. Now, perhaps in that same scrawly handwriting, they've fed in millions of doctors' scripts to that. Data seems to be the big one, data and around that, getting the data, enough data in to drive the models, the generative models, to come up with a good diagnosis. But if you look at your hand, I just want you to look at your skin for a moment, because our next speaker is going to be focusing very closely on something that we would use our eyes for to see if there's an anomaly. If you've ever had a skin cancer or a freckle go rogue, you might have thought, oh, is that looks a bit different. And then you take that to a doctor, and that doctor may have seen you before, they may not have, but it's their job to then look at that same patch of skin and go, and remember, go back through all of that, all of the skin checks they've done of every person, and go, oh yeah, that looks a bit different. I don't know, can't remember. But they do a good job. They are professionals. But how can AI be incorporated into something like skin checks for skin cancer? Professor Monica Janda is the Director of the Centre for Health Services Research at the University of Queensland. Her work focuses on applied health and clinical research, mainly looking at cancer prevention, detection, early detection, and treatment outcomes. So Professor Monica joins us this evening from Turrbal and Jagera country, which is Brisbane. And thanks for joining us, Monica.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk to you about the future of melanoma early detection and how we can harness the power of artificial intelligence. Many of you in the room will already have some idea of what skin cancer and melanoma is, and many of you might already have a suspicious skin lesion excised in the past. This is not surprising because melanoma is the third most common cancer in Australia, and the non-melanoma skin cancers are even more common, with several hundred thousands of Australians being diagnosed with non-melanoma skin cancers each year. Our work is using new imaging technologies and artificial intelligence to improve how melanoma is detected. And we hope that using these technologies, we will find the skin cancers earlier with greater accuracy and more efficiently. As you can imagine, a lot of things are going on the skin, and it's actually quite a difficult task to pick the right lesion and detect melanoma early. And so it really requires a trained eye to spot the subtle changes that often indicate that there is a problem. And even the most experienced doctors will sometimes miss these signs, or patients don't come early enough to draw the attention of a particular lesion to a doctor. And so we hope that that artificial intelligence can step in to help us on solving this really difficult problem. So today I thought that I would talk to you about what the future of melanoma screening might look like and how we can integrate artificial intelligence and imaging technologies into the pathway. The screening process will begin with an invitation to screen. So you might receive it in the mailbox, or you might receive it on your MyGov account. An email might come to you, and this in the future might not be a random invite at a certain age. It might already take into account some of your medical history that is on the MyGov record, and might integrate where you are born and where you live and how much sun exposure you therefore have received over your childhood. So people that are at higher risk potentially might get the invitation earlier. and people who had lower risk might get it later in life. And so AI could help to integrate a lot of this information that we are currently not using to send the invitation to screen in a more personalized way to you. Once you have received your letter of invitation, most likely what will follow is a risk assessment. And this will mean that you will be asked to enter some information, such as, again, your skin type, your eye color, your hair color, family history of skin cancer, how much sun exposure you usually get, and more. And the beauty of artificial intelligence algorithms is that they can integrate a lot more information than what we are currently are using. So current risk assessments are really good, but they are probably able to be improved by using many additional small pieces of information that then can help to really sort people into groups with regards to their skin cancer risk much more detailed. So once you've completed your risk assessment, the algorithm has scored your risk, and you might be put into a group. And let's say you fall into the low risk category. A bot might talk to you about what that means, and you might be able to ask questions and say, what does it mean if I'm low risk? What should I do now? It might give you information about how to do skin self-examination and what to do if you have a spot or mole popping up that you are concerned about. And you could approach that bot at any time of the day or night and as often as you would like. And the information that you get there will be, again, personalized and answering your questions very directly. There have studies been done where information that was provided by a doctor was compared to information that was provided by an AI-generated bot. And people didn't know who the information was coming from. And people liked the bot better because it was more empathic and gave more detailed information. So you might get a really good service using such a bot. If you're high risk, then we could, for example, use one of these fancy machines that you can see here on the screen, a 3D total body imaging device with 92 cameras that all at once photograph you and create a digital avatar. Here, the artificial intelligence comes in really strongly in image analysis. The algorithms and neural network analysis are really good at detecting what is on an image, not only to differentiate between what is a cat or what is a dog, but obviously they can also really analyze in detail the images that come from these machines. So this is what it looks like when a person is analyzed with one of these 3D total body imaging machines. You can see on the person's body on the left-hand side, which is that digital avatar, all the small blue triangles. Each of them represents a skin spot that the AI has detected. And on the right-hand side, you can see this bubble graph where it's sorting it into the lesions by size, by color, and by irregularity of the border. And so a lot of work is already going into this software, the algorithms really helping to make sense of all the things that are going on in the skin. And you can see from this person's image, there is a lot that is going on. And so I'm always amazed at how doctors actually can look at all these lesions and pick the right one out. So getting some help from AI, I think, makes a lot of sense. So these images then that we're collecting using these imaging devices, they are put into training sets and validation sets to train the AI. And this is very important that we do this here in Australia because people here in Australia have much more sun damage. And so lesions here look different to those in other countries of the world where people don't get as much ultraviolet radiation exposure as here in Australia. And once all these data sets have been created and have been used and analyzed by the algorithms, which looks like this and involves very complex modeling and statistical analysis that goes way beyond what I'm capable to do, but I'm relying on amazing teams of specialists here to come up with an algorithm that then will hopefully do this, sorting all these lesions that you have seen before into logical clusters, clusters that are clearly benign, clusters that are intermediate, and then clusters that are really worrisome. And that can really help to the clinicians to look at the right lesions closely and carefully. But as we know, the devil is always in the detail. And so there might be really interesting and concerning lesions that you show to the algorithm, and it might say, that's really concerning. You have to look at this more closely. But then the clinicians know that the context is very important. And so if you zoom out a little bit, then you might see that this is actually a spot on a banana, and the clinician might not be as concerned about it once they see the whole picture. So it's very important to always keep the context in mind, and you can see from this example that taking away the human completely out of the picture is never possible. You need the human in the loop when you're using AI algorithms to make sense of the data. And so, given what you just saw, it's not surprising that when we ask dermatologists about what they think about AI and where it's at the moment, 53% thought that AI will be used for key tasks in the future, but currently only 25% are willing to trust the AI to be as good as their own clinical judgment. So human in the loop, very important for them. So going on in our journey along the screening pathway, the AI has sorted the lesions into the different boxes, and the clinician can now look at each of the lesions. The AI software support continues here. So what you can see on this picture is that for a particular lesion that is in the middle there, number 20, the AI not only presents how it looks today, but also presents how it looked the last time that you had your imaging, and then gives you an indication of whether something has changed. So in this case, it has marked the lesion in blue, and blue means that there is something that has been growing since the person came in last time. In the right-hand picture, you can see that there are also some lesions that have a yellow marking, and yellow shows that the skin spot has been smaller since the last time this person came in. So both of these signs, growing and shrinking lesions, is important for the clinicians to know about, because that's a sign that there is something going on with this particular lesion and they need to look at it. Some of the lesions might completely disappear, which is also important, and some might be completely new. Again, something that the AI can detect by comparing the exact spot on the body to the last time and then show that to the clinician. This is really new and really very different to how skin checks are currently being done. When you go to your doctor, there usually is no record of what was there the last time. The doctor has to rely on your memory and their own memory of whether something was there. So big change from the clinical pathway with regards to these change algorithms that are now available. Interestingly, AI is also helping doctors now with administration tasks. There are AI algorithms now that can listen to the conversation between you and the doctor and can take the notes, the clinical notes, and also send the letter to the referring doctor, or also give a patient record that you can take home so that you have a record of what the doctor told you. Doctors are really excited about this because this helps them to get away again from the computer task, from the keyboard, and being able to look their patients into the eye again, not having to type notes, is something that they really love. And so I think very soon when you go to your doctor, you will experience this AI in action, and hopefully it will make you feel more valued again as a patient, and more in tune with your doctor, because they can spend more time with you again. So that's coming on very strongly. With regards to the digital avatar that I showed you before, and really exciting opportunity using this digital avatar is to actually conduct teledermatology. As you know, in Australia, most of the doctors, most of the clinicians are located in metropolitan areas, and there's a shortage of doctors in regional and rural areas. If you imagine that we had the imaging devices in those areas, people could go along, have a picture taken, and that picture of your digital avatar could be sent to the metropolitan areas, actually anywhere around the world, for a doctor to look at your skin remotely and then have a teleconsultation with you. We've just finished a trial to test whether this works as well as a clinical examination, and our study found that we need to do more work to make it absolutely comparable. At the moment, we found that a teledoctor usually is more a little bit more concerned about things that they see because they cannot touch the lesion, and it's not in the face-to-face situation where they can ask you about it. So they're excising a bit more than in the clinical situation, but it's feasible and it works really well. So more work to be done, but quite a good approach. Another thing that you will be probably interested in is sort of apps. A lot of you will have lots of apps on your phones, apps that bring you your food, that bring you your transport, that link you with your family. And so there are also a number of apps out there that you can use to look at your own spots and moles, and that will give you an AI diagnosis of these spots or moles. We recently did a study where we compared several of these apps, and what we did was we had 33 participants took images of 64 of their spots and moles, and then we presented these exactly same spots and moles to the 8 different apps. And what we found that the apps only agreed in 9% of the spots and moles. So depending which app you download, you might get a very different result at the moment. So I would say maybe wait a little longer until we have tested these apps a bit more and are sure that they can work really well in the Australian context again. It might be that a lot of them have been developed in international settings and need to be adjusted better to the Australian data, but at the moment wouldn't recommend necessarily to use them. Also, it's very exciting and in the future might form a key path in your screening journey. So AI is also coming in strongly in your clinical care. Some people who go through the screening process will have a biopsy or excision, and that will be looked at by a pathologist. And basically, it's a microscopic image of what's going on in your skin. Again, this can be digitalized, and then the AI can also help in looking at your pathology reports and helping the pathologist to see whether there are any changed lesions in that pathology slide that indicate that this is a serious skin cancer, and also the features of this skin cancer. Is it one that where the cells divide rapidly, or is it a slow-growing cancer? And based on that, AI might also be able to help the clinician to predict which treatment is the best for this particular skin cancer. So with regards to those imaging devices that I've shown you, we're currently conducting a very big study. We were lucky to have funding by the Australian Cancer Research Foundation for 15 of these amazing novel devices, and they are spread out all across the eastern seaboard. You can see here in regional and rural communities in particular. And so this really helps us to collect a lot of data from our Australian participants, and then use all that data of all these skin spots that you saw on the previous slides to train the AI and make it really suitable for our Australian context. So we're very lucky that we are doing that. At the moment, we have 7,500 people in our study, and we are continuing to recruit participants, and we are following them at regular intervals. So all this big data then helps us to improve the screening pathway as I've shown you. So what will the future hold? Pretty certain that the future will integrate artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is just a tool as many others that we are using in medicine, and so we need to continue to test it, make sure it works well, make sure it doesn't change while we are using it, and it will never take the doctor out of the picture. It will always be doctor in the loop, working together with the AI. But it's definitely going to be a big part of the future of melanoma and skin cancer screening. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Monica, are you there? A big round of applause for the thank you for. And I might welcome Enrico back up to the stage. Thank you for sticking with us. It is in technology v human. I'm not sure who won. The fact that the live streamers continued to hear Monica, that's why we couldn't play her back. But Monica, we've got you live now for questions, and Enrico live here in Canberra. I think we might just go back to your question. Would you mind asking it again? I think the microphone is just coming down. And then, Monica, you'll be in the hot seat.
So my question was, when you started off the talk, you mentioned the current ratio, 60, 30, 10. And my question was, with AI, do you have any targets in mind to improve that ratio?
It's a great question. The answer is it depends a lot on setting. So I think that 10%, which is patient harm, if you study patient safety, it's incredibly hard to fix. It's usually multiple things go wrong at once. So I think the big benefit is going to be that 60-30, where we get people to be treated according to best evidence and avoiding things that the evidence says you shouldn't do. So don't order that lumbar X-ray for the back pain, because it's not going to make a difference. So the targets will vary nation by nation, but we're going to get 100% right in Australia, aren't we? Yeah.
I think we've got the online audience. Any questions from the online audience?
Yes, hi, Lish. Oh, I'm echoing. I think we're all echoing. We've got one for Enrico here. Given the rise in use of AI in clinical and GP settings, is the onus now on us to double-check and verify the information we receive from clinicians?
Well, hopefully you're doing that anyway. But there is a new onus on clinicians to check the output of the technologies, which is hopefully made clear, partly the automation bias issue, partly the hallucination issue. One of the things that I worry about, and I should not use anecdotal data, but when I speak to digital scribe manufacturers, I ask them, do doctors check the output of your AI before they hit the accept button? Do they edit it, for example? And they say, oh yes, people edit everything for at least 2 days. And then they're comfortable with the technology and they tend to stop. Which is automation bias, yeah? So I think in a way that means, especially if it's computer generated, pay attention. And it's, again, as I said, patient errors happen when many things go wrong. And the idea is to have these Swiss cheeses which block the errors going through and harming you. So consumers or patients are one of the layers of protection. So read.
I think from Monica and Enrico, I hear it as a really powerful diagnostic tool. It has the potential to be for treatment, patient care, for just the general grunt work of the medical teams writing up reports, referrals. But with that comes the privacy concerns and data, and how our data is used. And who gets their hand on it and who benefits from it. And I wonder, Monica, I might throw to you just on the data for your treatment and what is powering the AI tool that you use.
Yes, that's such a good question, and actually a reason why we are collecting data specifically in Australia, because obviously with regards to skin cancer, I don't know whether you heard that part of my presentation, Australians have much more sun damage than people in other countries of the world, and so we definitely need to collect data here in Australia. We've done studies with our consumers with regards to sharing of that data. And people are really happy to share, obviously, the individual lesions quite widely with Australian researchers, but also internationally. As you then become, as you then sort of have a little bit of a bigger piece of the skin, people become a bit more restrictive and are happy to share it with Australian researchers and for the data to stay in Australia. Obviously, the total body image, the avatar, the digital avatar, people want the most restrictions on those types of data. And so it depends a bit on which piece of data we are using and how much people are comfortable in sharing it.
Enrico, do you want to add anything to that?
Just that there's a big issue of social license to use data. So Monica's spot on that people are willing to share anonymised data for research purposes. They're less happy when commercial entities use their data. And in England, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, they sold data to Google DeepMind actually without the consent of the population. And there was a huge uproar. And in fact, they had to rescind that because there was no license. You know, I went to the NHS to be treated, and I didn't agree for you to sell this to a private company. So you very quickly can get in trouble.
It's a fine line though, isn't it? Because you want the outcome to drive research, and research needs money, and in this country especially, money is tight for research. So how do you find that funding? It's an ethical question. I'm going to throw out to the questions again, and if you'd like to raise your hand or approach the microphone at the top for if you've got a question. I might over here.
Enrico, some of the tasks you described that AI can help us with are tasks that a junior doctor would be expected to do, and there's a possibility that they'll miss out on that education pathway. What are some of the risks and solutions to that change?
A great question. This issue of de-skilling, I think there are two angles to it. One is if we design these systems to be partnerships, you know, it's a tool to assist you in making your decision, then it can educate. So I'm thinking of AIs for X-ray interpretation in emergency departments, which are now available. What they do is they'll identify potential issues on the image, but not provide you the diagnosis and say, please pay attention. The other answer, which is a tougher one to swallow, which is it's always been thus, and that to be a doctor in 2050 will be a very different job to 2025. And what we do and what we delegate elsewhere will change. You know, and people like myself will feel very uncomfortable, probably you will feel too, but I think things will change. And as long as patient care improves, then that's okay. But it's an uncomfortable conversation.
How do you see it changing? But if you could look into the crystal ball,
To me, it's very clear that a big part of healthcare is the human element, which is the interaction, the trust, the guidance. And you know, Monica spoke about AI just being a tool, another tool. I think for now it will be the case that it is just another tool, but it will get better. You know, and AI in 10 years' time is a different creature. So it will be doing more and more. We've known for years that you can do cognitive behavioural therapy online, and people prefer to work with the technology to go through the cognitive behavioural therapy for the depression or anxiety, often to seeing a human. So it's not always even that humans are best. So anyway.
and as Monica, you mentioned access to healthcare, and across the world as our population explodes and staffing shortages already we see here in Canberra alone, you know, the wait times to get in to see even a GP. Does it alleviate some of that burden? I wonder. That's my question, and I know you've got lots more. Online?
Yes, this one's for Monica. Regarding the development of skin cancer detection models, how are we curating training the data to minimise bias? For example, the colour of a person's skin, to ensure that all members of the community get access to the same quality of care?
Yes, this is a really good question. Thank you so much for asking it. And we actually have to make a very conscious effort to recruit participants to our studies with which we then train the AI to have a really good representation. What we are facing, though, is that we have to really encourage people to come along. Obviously, people that have sensitive skin are much more likely to agree to participate in our studies. And so we're actually doing special research to find out how we can encourage other people to also come along and help us with regards to building the models. So it's definitely important. Could I just add with regards to the previous question, it's interesting with AI, so the de-skilling is a problem, but AI can also help us to train doctors or healthcare professionals better. For example, we have studied what the AI is actually looking at when it's making a prediction. And then it was found that the AI was not looking at the lesion itself, but at the surrounding skin. And then once this was integrated into training of the healthcare professionals, their diagnosis also improved. So it can actually go both ways, that we can also learn from how the AI makes its predictions to then improve our diagnostic procedures. So it's not just one way, I guess.
Thank you. Down the front here.
Hi, Enrico. You pointed out that there are lots of disadvantages and advantages in using AI. Do the companies that sell AI to doctors point out any of the disadvantages?
It depends very much on which technology you're talking about. So if you're talking about the ultra-sophisticated CT machines, MRIs, etc., then people absolutely know the performance characteristics of those things. And as I think I mentioned, anything that goes through the TGA process in Australia, Therapeutic Goods Administration, has to provide data on the risks as well as the benefits. And that's why I was so anxious about these digital scribes, because they avoid that process at the moment, and we don't know how good those letters or notes are. And you should be able to say, what is your error rate? How many words, how many concepts do you get wrong on average? But we don't know because the manufacturers don't tell us. But typically the industry is very conscious that its reputation is based on doing the right thing, and that bad outcomes are bad for business. So typically people are very good about that.
In the green top in the middle.
This is to both of you. I mean, medical diagnosis is already a very expensive procedure for the patient. Is any of this technology going to bring down prices of seeing a doctor, or is it just going to become yet another burden that we're forced into paying for because the doctors are relying on this technology rather than their own skills?
So last year, Productivity Commission did a big study on the impact of digital and AI on healthcare, and they're pretty reasonable people, and they've identified about $5 billion a year of savings to the health system, largely through 30% elimination of tasks, usually routine tasks for nurses and doctors, which frees them up, hopefully, to do the right sort of thing. So big picture, it's going to give us a more cost-effective healthcare system done well. I have to say, hopefully there's nobody from the government here, that we do love giant technology projects in healthcare, and they can consume billions of dollars, and I don't always think that's money well spent. So there have to be other models where we don't always go for the big, shiny, complex system. Being able to embed simple melanoma detection in a dermatology office should be a cheap thing to do. Building a whole of nation AI system to diagnose, probably will cost us billions and not bring us there. So it's not the technology, it's very much how you procure the technology, how you conceive the technology. We can do it smartly, cheaply, or we can waste an awful lot of taxpayer money. Depends on your mood, I guess.
So I guess,
Monica,
technology, just as any other, I guess, medical intervention needs to be assessed in hopefully properly run clinical trials. And one part of that clinical trial assessment is always the health economics assessment and our, health technology assessment authorities then use this data from those trials and from the health economics assessments to make their decisions. One problem with AI is that it's a constantly changing technology. And so that makes it a bit more difficult to really assess the health economic impact. And so we're currently working on improving some of the models that the technology assessment authorities can use to assess a changing technology, such as AI. But it's something that's still being worked on.
Thanks, Monica. I think we have time for one more question up the top.
Yeah, thank you. My question is similar to one that was asked previously, and my question is as follows. How can we ensure AI in healthcare improves outcomes without exacerbating existing inequalities? So AI models are often trained on biased or incomplete data sets, which can lead to unequal healthcare outcomes or access or treatment recommendations. So my key concerns are the underrepresentation of minority groups, for example, First Nations people, and algorithmic bias. Seeking your comments, please. Thanks.
Monica, I might throw to you.
That's definitely something that we are also very concerned about, and really trying to overcome this by making sure that our data set is as representative as possible, and that, I guess, bias is not integrated and sort of making the problem of inequitable healthcare worse. So that's absolutely something that we are also very concerned about and actively working on. Oops.
Oops. Enrico?
The question you ask actually is even a bigger and harder question than that, because our mental model for AI is that this is something I can buy and off the shelf and plug in wherever I go. It doesn't work that way. If I buy algorithms from North America, they won't work in Australia. They need to be localised and customised. If I build an algorithm in Darwin, it probably needs to be customised to Melbourne because the populations differ. So it's not even that we're not being representative in our sampling, it's just that we shift and change as we go. So populations change, disease incidence changes, socioeconomic factors which affect healthcare change. So it's a fundamental issue with AI, which is we need to move from it's a thing in a box to it's a service we provide which is deeply embedded in healthcare and requires us to tend it every day. So it's a different world.
Yeah, great question, thank you. I think we might have to wrap it there because we're already a bit over time. But thank you all for excellent questions. I know, no doubt, many more. I think this is just the start, and you can do your deep dive into AI. Thanks to our fabulous speakers. Can you please give a big round of applause to Monica and Enrico? And our conveners and our sponsors. The next event is on Tuesday, the 10th of June. It's AI and the environment. The speakers are going to be Camille Golston-Henry, who's the CEO of Xylo Systems, and Associate Professor Chang Zhu from the University of Sydney. And it's interesting, AI and the environment. The thing I learnt was when I do a Google search v an AI search on my phone, it uses something like 20 times the energy to do that same search. I learnt that last lecture. The energy use and the water use to power the data centres that drive the AI is extraordinary. So how do we build for that when we're trying to combat climate change across the globe, and where do we build them? It's a fascinating conversation, as well as how we can tackle the big topics around the environment through using AI and models. It's so many questions, and if you've got more questions, then that's exactly how it should be, because I don't think these guys would say that we're anywhere near getting the answers. It's a complete mine. So series pass holders, you're right, you're sweet. See you soon. Anyone else, grab a ticket. And if you miss it being in the room, you could always join us online. Anyone for Monica, I know we missed a part of your talk, Monica, but we will send out a link to Monica's complete presentation to anyone here tonight. I want to end it on, I'd like to say trust Monica and Enrico because they're doctors. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Does it? No. Do we still trust? There's equal trust. Some people trust doctors, some people put their trust in AI. We just got to arm ourselves and brace for impact. Any last final word as people go off and go and interrogate AI?
I'm a cautious optimist.
That's a nice way to be. Monica?
I would tend to agree. More work to be done. And yeah, absolutely. I think AI is already part of our current presence and will be part of our future.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Embrace for impact.